The Colorado Avalanche have clinched a playoff spot, and Cale Makar reaches the 30 goal mark. Newcomers are making a splash, and playoff races are coming down to the wire as the Blues just keep winning. Plus, will Ovi break the record this weekend? All that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everyone, and thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. I'm here each and every Friday with Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders. You can find us over on YouTube or anywhere you listen to podcasts, so subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. Gil, how are we doing this Friday?
We are getting down to the wire. We have like 2 weeks left of this season. So
I know, time flies, man. At some points in the season, you feel like it's been going on forever. And then sometimes it feels like it just started yesterday. But teams are continuing to clinch those playoff spots, including the Colorado Avalanche, who got a 7-3 win over the Columbus Blue Jackets. And we're also going to talk about the Blue Jackets because that was not a good game for them. It was an unfortunate loss, and it does not help them in their playoff race. But Colorado Avalanche seem to be positioning themselves very well. They've had some success since the trade deadline, which they used to kind of button things up for the club. And I think this team is really in a good position heading into the playoffs.
they are. And, they're 7-2-1 in their last 10 games. And they seem to be hitting on all cylinders right now. The only thing is that Central Division, they're almost certainly going to have to face Dallas in that first round and not have home ice advantage. That series just shapes up to be must-see hockey.
Oh my God, I am so excited. I mean, of course, like Dallas themselves are 8-0-2 in their last 10 and on a 7-game win streak of their own. So I think it is going to be a good series, but I do think that, when all is said and done, this was an important win for the Avs to get. And especially again, like I said, against a Columbus team that is really hungry right now to try and get that playoff spot in the East. But of course, we do have to talk about Cale Makar, a goal and 2 assists in that game. And he is a defenseman who got 30 goals. And it is not an achievement that happens very often.
No, it doesn't. And Makar is a special talent. I mean, you go back through the different years and some of the outstanding defensemen who could put up 30 goals. You have your Bobby Orr, your Dennis Potvin, your Paul Coffey. It is not a frequent occurrence. And these, Cale Makar is just a rare talent. He fits in so well with that Avalanche system, works so well with some of the players he's had to work with, and they just bring out the best in each other. Is Nathan McKinnon without Cale Makar, and is Cale Makar as good without Nathan McKinnon? I just think the way these guys play so well together, and it just makes for such entertaining hockey also.
Yeah, that's what's so great about Makar as an offensive defenseman, right? Is that he is a playmaker for the rest of his team around him. He has 60 assists this season as well to show for it. And, you can look at offensive defensemen and their assist totals, and some of them aren't going to be as high as that with the 60 assists. So Cale Makar does everything he can as a playmaker, but then to also score those 30 goals on top of it, like that is just absolutely remarkable.
It's incredible. And now here's the other question: does he have a shot at 100 points?
I mean, you have to think so,
Yeah.
right?
One more big, one more or 2 more 3-point games. He's got a really good shot if he could put together, a couple of games like that. Now, Does he play every game down the stretch because Colorado is more or less locked into their spot? That
Mm,
remains to be seen. But if he plays every game down the stretch, I think he's got a shot at it.
I think so too, because if you look at the stand or the schedule for the Avs going out, like I think it is possible. Again, except for to your point, if the Avs kind of pull back a little bit and try and get people some rest, but I just think it's something that is entirely possible here. Now, what's interesting is that they are facing some top teams in their schedule coming up. So it is going to be a challenge. I mean, they face the Red Hot Blues next on
Hmm.
Saturday. Then they're playing Vegas. They've got Vancouver and then the Kings. So, and then their last game of the season is against the Ducks. And I would surmise that last game they're going to rest some guys. So,
Probably. Probably.
I don't know if they're going to rest guys against those other teams. I don't know
We'll
that I
see.
would if I were them. But
Yeah, I agree. And as far as the Blue Jackets are concerned,
hmm,
it is tough to watch them stumble here at the end of what has been such a great story all year long. They're not out of it yet by any means, but their margin for error is just getting smaller and smaller with each passing loss. And to me, look, there's no shame in losing badly to Colorado when they're on their game. They're as good as anybody. But with that much on the line, you would hope Columbus could put together a better performance.
yeah, and they have a tough road out too. If you look at their schedule ahead, they have got to play the Leafs. They're playing the Sens twice. They've got, a game against the Sabres, but then they're playing the Caps twice. I mean, you know, not easy, not easy at all. And so I think it is going to be a struggle for them. I think to try and get that. And you're right, it is so unfortunate considering how they were playing up to that. And is it the goaltending a little bit? Is it some lack of scoring? I mean, you look at a game that's 7-3 and you're like, well, they got 3 goals. Like they should have been in it, but
Right.
defensively they weren't there. So, they can put up those numbers in terms of goals. We've seen it and we've seen it recently. They had a game against Vancouver where they scored 7. The Blue Jackets scored 8 against Nashville. Now I understand that's in Nashville,
Yeah.
but still, like, they can put up those numbers, and it's like, can they do it when it's at the most critical juncture? And we haven't seen that.
No, and look, this is a team that nobody expected to even be here. They're still a young building team.
Yes.
This is the learning process. This is how a team you learn by failing and figuring out what didn't work and then doing something different to make it work. And I think every young team has to go through that learning process, and this may be the education of the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah, and they are absolutely set up for success. They have a very good prospect pool. I have no doubt that they're gonna take a step forward next season, and I just you have to look at is a playoff series this year useful for them in their build process and in their development process? I mean, I would say yes, because I don't think it makes much of a difference draft wise of getting out
Right.
knocked out in the first round and being at the bottom of the lottery section. But I think it'd be good experience for these guys.
It would be. And look, it still could happen. You mentioned the difficult schedule, but look, the Blue Jackets have been a little bit streaky this year, and when they're on, they can beat anybody. The question is, can they do it consistently enough down the stretch to get into the playoffs? And there's just a lot of competition right now. Uh, the East is still pretty bunched up.
It is. I think, there's a narrowing channel of teams that
Yeah.
are having a shot here. I think we're down to like 3 teams maybe that have a possibility for that wild card spot with Montreal and the Rangers. But I just think that it would benefit. I think it would benefit, first off, the NHL as a whole to have Columbus get that spot in some ways. Now, there's an argument for Montreal, but
Yes.
you know, there's a big argument for Montreal. Don't get me wrong. But
Yeah,
I
there
think
is.
for a small market team like Columbus to make the playoffs, I think there is a certain benefit to that as a whole for the league. So we'll see, but I don't know. Montreal is still up and down right now, and yeah, I'm not sure which team of theirs shows up from day to day. So it is going to be a tight race down to the wire for sure. But on some of these teams, we've got new guys coming in fresh from college hockey, signing ELCs, joining teams. It is one of my favorite times of the year in hockey because of that, and we are going to talk about all that coming up next. The spring is officially here, and if you're feeling discombobulated because we have all that extra sunshine, 5 Hour Energy has your back. It gives you more time for fun. Sometimes you need a little boost to power through, though, whether you're staying up late watching all these playoff race hockey games or just trying to keep up with your busy day. 5 Hour Energy gives you a quick, refreshing pick me up whenever you need it. With these longer days, I love getting outside for a hike, and Tropical Burst is my go-to flavor for that quick boost. So head to 5hourenergy.com. You can find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. If you need one now, you can grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery store or convenience store. They're pretty much everywhere. So stock up today and stay energized. All right. So this time of year absolutely is one of my favorite parts of the NHL season. We get it a little bit at the beginning of the season when we have NHL debuts, but in the late season with ELCs and college free agent signings, we get a ton of guys making their NHL debuts in the last couple weeks of the season. And I love it because we get, the rookie laps, we get families in the stands, we get teammates, as we saw with the Boston College crew supporting Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault this past week. And it is so fun. And it is like the unbridled joy of hockey watching somebody make their NHL debut.
Yeah, it reminds us of the human side of all of this. And, every once in a while, I think we need to be reminded of the human side of all this. And here are, 20-year-old kids, give or take a year, realizing their dream for the first time.
Hmm.
And there is just something magical about that moment. And it's even the rituals, hockey culture sometimes gets criticized for some of its rituals. These are good ones.
These are excellent
The,
ones.
the rookie lap is such a great little tradition, and it adds to the specialness of an already special day and moment. And the teammates are usually very supportive, so it's great to see. It really is.
It really is. And I love the contract signing photos. Sometimes those are very creative. And I just think it just reinvigorates things right as we're heading into the playoffs, as you feel like some of your teams are kind of worn down from the season. And, especially like if your team, for instance, is like out of the playoff race, but you have a new signing come in like a prospect that you've been excited about for the last 2 years, and they're finally making their NHL debut. It gives you something to kind of hold on to look forward to for the following season, which I think is really great. So I think it kind of brings the entirety of the NHL into the conversation, not just the playoff teams. And that's the other part of it that I really love.
Yeah, especially if your team is out of the hunt, because it gives your team a little juice, a little something
Yeah.
for the fans to focus on, to look forward to. And then, for teams that are in the playoff hunt, if you're adding a player, that's like a trade deadline edition almost.
Yep.
So that can give you a little bit of juice.
Yeah, and that's an interesting part of it as well. So, I mentioned Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault are like the two, I think, biggest signings that we've seen from prospects this late season. We saw Ryan Leonard has made a really good first impression with the Washington Capitals, playing very well. And in fact, the Caps weren't playing that great, but Leonard did in their in their last game. So I think, because obviously he's really excited and he's coming off like a college season where he's a leader on that team. So he's going to continue that momentum for the Caps, which is like, again, a team that's dominated this season, but you can always use like a fresh perspective and a fresh burst of energy. And Leonard is certainly providing that for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, look, back to back 30 goal seasons at BC, including 30 goals in 37 games this year. So, you know, how long it'll take him to be successful in the NHL? Will he ever be successful in the NHL? We don't know, but the potential is definitely there. He was the 8th overall pick in 2023, and I'm still waiting for that first goal, but so far he has not looked out of place in his 2 games.
No, and, I really liked Ryan Leonard in that draft, and I was very disappointed that the Flyers did not sign him and that he went to the Caps, but I wish nothing but the best for him as an individual there, and I am certain he's going to be a very successful NHLer, and I think Gabe Perreault will too with the New York Rangers, and, the Rangers did win that game. Perreault didn't score or anything, but he had like just shy of 14 minutes of ice time with the Rangers. He was on an ice with JT Miller and Lafreniere. So like that's a pretty good line to start off your NHL career with. And he's a playmaker and he
Right.
was able to kind of showcase that skill a little bit. And so I just really think he's in a good position to help the Rangers clinch that playoff spot and maybe contribute in the playoffs.
Yeah, and they can use the boost because they have been a team that has had, you know, issues in that locker room almost all season long. So, getting someone with a fresh perspective who could add a little playmaking skill, that's a definite good addition for the Rangers. And maybe he helps them get in.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And of course, I mean, there's other guys that have signed ELCs and will have or will be making their NHL debuts. And I know like Matthew Wood might end up playing for the Preds at some point. He was their first round draft pick recently. And then kind of the other side of it is the college free agent signings who like undrafted guys. There's been several top free agent signings that have happened so far. And I know at least like for the Flyers, we've got Carson Dorwart, who played at Michigan State and signed with the Flyers. He's going to be making his NHL debut on Saturday when the Flyers face the Canadiens. And that is going to be an interesting experience for
Yes,
him for sure, having his first game against Montreal. But I think it's going to be a good one.
it is. It is. And again, it's just the magic of the moment. And
Hmm.
undrafted free agents, those guys, it's even more special because they didn't take the typical road to
Yep.
get there, and people doubted them and didn't think they had the talent. The scouts overlooked them, and then they find sort of, I don't want to say a backdoor way, but an unorthodox way to reach the NHL and realize that dream that they've probably had since they were 7 or 8 years old. So,
Yep.
uh, yeah, these are great personal moments. And even if these guys don't go on to a 10-year NHL career, the fact that they made it in the best league in the world speaks volumes about their accomplishments.
Right. And I think, you mentioned earlier about it kind of like making an extra trade deadline move after the deadline and getting reinforcements there, whereas the rules may prevent you from doing that per se. I think like for instance with Carson Dorwart and the Flyers, his signing allowed them to in effect get an additional call up because the Flyers burned all 4 of their post-trade deadline call-ups already, but this is a way to get around that a little bit.
Right, right. Yeah, well, hey, when there's a will, there's a way, and there's always a loophole, right? I mean,
Yep, yep. So, I think that's fun, but he'll make his debut at the Bell Center, which I think is gonna be a super cool thing for him.
no doubt, no doubt.
All right. Well, there's so much else going on around the league, and we've got the Blues who are just continuing to be dominant, and so many other stories going on. We've got Ovi Watch, and we're getting real close here, so we'll see what happens. We're going to talk about all that coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NCAA tournament is winding down. The Final Four is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I've got my eye on a few underdogs this year, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. With tournament games winding down, the Final Four in both the men's and the women's brackets here, there's always something exciting to bet on, and the FanDuel app is so simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on all the college hoops action all tournament long. That's FanDuel.com. Check it out today.
We were just talking about guys making their NHL debut, and this week the St. Louis Blues saw the debut of Jimmy Snuggerud for their team. He made his debut on Tuesday of this week, and I think that was really cool for him to join a team that is part of now an 11-game win streak after they just won in overtime against the Pittsburgh Penguins, who really had no business being in that game, but somehow they were. Right?
They found a way to hang around. Yeah, they
Yeah.
did. But 11 straight for the St. Louis Blues. And I guess the question is, how dangerous is this Blues team going to be in the playoffs? And will they put a fly in the ointment of some of the favorites that, they're going to face one of the better teams in the first round?
They are, and I think that's where I think it'll be interesting, because this has been an unexpected win streak from this team. Although, they do have the skill and the talent. I'm not like saying they're a bad team,
No,
but I do think when a team has an unexpected run like this, which is one of the best in team history, right? I think that you can go one of two ways. You can have your bubble burst when you get in the playoffs and your opponent up levels their game in a way that you can't, right? That's the downside. The upside is you keep the momentum going, right? And have a kind of surprise win against your potential opponent. And like with this Blues team, I honestly think it could go either way.
totally. Totally. And to me, the key is Jordan Binnington, because
Yeah.
when he's on his game, he's as good as any goalie in the league. But when he's not on his game, he can really hurt your team, letting in some soft goals and just being rather inconsistent. So if Binnington has his A game, the Blues can hang with anybody in the playoffs.
They can. And I'm not sure based on how it's going to come out in the wash, like who that opponent will be yet, but it's looking like it will likely be, as of now, the Winnipeg Jets, and that's a tough
It's a
team
tall
to.
order.
Yeah, it like, especially going up against the brick wall that is Connor Hellebuck, who always steps it up for the playoffs, right? That is a tall order for the
But
Blues.
think about this, though. You've got Dallas, Colorado, and maybe St. Louis, Winnipeg. How good are these playoff matchups looking
Oh my
at this
god.
point? They're not
Oh my
settled
god.
yet, but wow.
I know. I can't wait. I cannot wait for these playoffs. I think this is going to be, as an East Coaster, I'm staying up for those West Coast
Oh yeah.
games. Like
Oh yeah.
100%. It is on with how good these games are going to be. Now, luckily, a lot of these are Central Division matchups, so it won't be too late. But I
Well, you
I
still
think
have
that
Oilers Kings for the fourth straight
yes.
year.
Oh my God. Now, speaking of the Oilers, Draisaitl is now hurt, and as a guy who is, I think, a presumptive Hart finalist, potential winner, like that has got to be a really devastating thing for the Oilers to have right at this moment in the season.
Yeah, bad timing. Not that there's ever good timing for a guy to get injured, and obviously we hope he recovers uh, quickly. But yeah, that is a painful loss for the Edmonton Oilers for as long as Draisaitl remains out of the lineup.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. We'll probably have a better sense of what's going on with him in and around the Oilers game on Saturday, which happens to be against those Los Angeles Kings. So,
Warm up.
oh, yep, we'll get a playoff series warm up there for sure. We will also be getting a game tonight between the Washington Capitals and Chicago Blackhawks, which normally would really mean nothing. However, as we know, Alex Ovechkin is 3 goals away from the goal scoring record that would put him above Wayne Gretzky all time. And like under normal circumstances, again, I wouldn't like Ovi scoring a hat trick might not be like something you'd be like, very unlikely. But against the Blackhawks, who knows, right?
Yeah, and the Blackhawks, look, they've lost 4 games in a row. They are 30th out of 32 teams in goals allowed. Uh,
Hmm.
you sort of wonder, you hate to accuse a team of this, but have they sort of packed it in for the season? Uh, it is going to be very, very interesting to see if Ovi can take advantage of this struggling Blackhawks team and get it done, because I would think he wants to do it at home if at all possible.
Right. I would think so, but sometimes you can't control these things. Now, this game is in Washington, as you said. It's on NHL Network in the US. So it's a national game, but a limited audience because a lot of people don't have NHL Network there. The Sunday game at New York Islanders, however, Gil, is a TNT national game in the US. And so and it's an afternoon game. Like what are your thoughts about him potentially breaking the record against the Islanders?
I'd certainly prefer that it not happen. In fact, I spoke about this on Locked On Islanders. You don't want for the next, 50 years that highlight clip is going to get shown over and over and over again. So we'll see. Look, it's going to happen barring something catastrophic. So the question is when. And I think for some of these other teams, whether it's the Blackhawks or the Islanders or whoever's next on the schedule, you got to have a certain amount of pride to not want to be the victim of that historic goal and to not be in that highlight reel that's going to be shown forever and ever and ever.
Listen, that's relatable. Once March 20th passed and that was the last Caps game against the Flyers, like I was a pretty happy camper.
There you
So
go.
I'm
There you
not gonna
go.
lie. The game after that is next Thursday at home for the Caps against Carolina. That is an ESPN plus Hulu Disney plus game. I don't know if they're gonna change that. If he's 1 goal, if he's set, let's say he's tied the record at that point, you have to think they're gonna want to put it on ESPN mothership, right?
Maybe. I would think they would, but we'll see. What do they have scheduled right now on ESPN mothership?
Well, it could be basketball tournament stuff,
Right.
so I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is that. But, I think this is an absolutely historic occasion, and I think that it's important that it's shown nationally and accessible by the most people, like, in order to celebrate it properly.
It should be. It should get maximum exposure. It's a magical moment. And I'm almost worried, if Gretzky's going to be in attendance, what will the reaction be? Because he is not exactly Mr. Popularity these days.
No, he is not. So that is its own level of drama
Yep.
there. And, we'll see what the NHL decides to do about this. And, like I said, there's plenty of other games of importance happening this weekend. The Blue Jackets are going to try and recover, but they are facing the Leafs. Like I said, coming up next, the Canadiens are playing the Flyers at home. So that could bode well for them. And, the Rangers are playing the Devils, and the Devils are not going to want the Rangers to find playoff success. I think there's a little bit of a rivalry there to it. So it should be a very good weekend that will maybe answer some of these questions that we have.
Looking forward to it. Its stretch drive has been exciting, and we still have 2 more weeks of regular season hockey to go.
We do. All right, that will do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. And of course, Gil will be back on Monday to talk to hosts from around the Locked On NHL network about what's going on with their teams. And we'll be back next Friday to recap the week that was and see where we are in all these playoff races. Maybe Ovi will have broken the record by then. Maybe not. Who knows? Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen today. For your next listen, find the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast, become a fantasy hockey expert, and get the edge over league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.